Hello everyone, welcome back and good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on the time zone. So today we are back to this novel, Love, from the literary icon Toni Morrison. As you can see, there's not a lot of light. This is summer, but today is really gray, and I mean the weather is really perfect for this book because even the book cover is gray, so I felt like this is perfect weather to talk about this book. I'm back to this book because I felt like this book is so rich in terms of topics, themes, symbols, ideas, perspectives, characters that I had to deep dive a little bit more. So my idea is to have a character series, and as the title will say, to deep dive a little bit more into the different characters present in this novel. So today I am going to talk about May. I have to make a quick spoiler alert. This is a character analysis, so I've tried as much as I could, as much as possible, not to spoil, but it's very difficult if I want to complete a relevant character analysis. So if you haven't finished the novel, don't watch, there are spoilers, okay? I really tried to refrain from using spoilers, but it is impossible. So you are warned. If you have finished the book, welcome, come in, take a seat, make yourself comfortable. I'm actually going to go and grab my cup of tea, my warm cup of tea, because we are gonna talk. Okay, I'm having my cup of tea. I'm having fennel tea, which is very good for the health. So today I am talking about the character May, and this is the edition that I'm using. As you can see here, the vintage UK edition from Random House. Okay, so if I make references to pages, this is the edition that I'm using. Vintage, yeah. Okay, May. Who is May? I had to read the book again, and I tried to focus solely on the character of May. I tried to put the pieces together to find out who this woman really is. That's when I realized that the narrator, the role of the narrator, the narrative style is so intriguing. And that's why I always say, when you read Toni Morrison, it's a great mental exercise. It's a good cognitive task that you do when you read Toni Morrison, because you have to work for meaning, you have to work for the truth. In particular, in this novel, Love, I really liked it, how you have to work to get each element, each fragment of truth, and to find out, to make the big picture, to get to the real picture, to get to the real thing. That's why I like to say, I feel like when you read Love, you read it a little bit like a detective novel. So who is May? I had to go back to the book, as I said, and I realized that the way she's portrayed varies. Like, there are subtle differences, and I'm going to elaborate on this later on, but all this to say that the narrative style is really specific. So you have Elle in this book. The character Elle is the only narrator who is using the first person point of view, but you have to be careful, okay? Careful here, because although the character Elle uses a first person point of view, she's not an omniscient narrator. She doesn't know the whole truth, she doesn't know everything, so her point of view is limited. It is still subjective, although as a character she tries to stay as close to the truth as she can, because she holds herself to these standards. She sees herself as a person with high morals, but then again, morality is subjective. Besides Elle, we have other different narrative voices. We have a third person limited narrator. So the third person makes us feel like the narrator knows it all, but the narrator is actually limited. So the narrator doesn't know or the truth either. The narrative is always reflecting the point of view of the character concerned. The narrator gives us different point of view. So we have like a kaleidoscope of point of views. We have like a polyphony of voices in this novel, which makes it really, really beautiful. And it brings us some type of challenge in trying to understand what is really going on, what is the truth. That's because, as I said, Toni Morrison wants to make us work for meaning. And as far as the truth is concerned, the truth is always heavy. Most times, truth is messy, complex, and sometimes uncomfortable. So in this aspect, the narrator is not always reliable, but that's because each character holds on to their own version of the truth. Each character has their own feelings, their own perspective. So we are seeing through the lenses of the character. And that leads us to question, what is the truth? Most of the time, truth is seen behind the lenses of experiences, feelings, subjectivity, perception, and it's up to us as readers to find a way, to find a trail toward the truth through the language, through the silences, and also through the imperfect recollections of the characters. It also points out to a big philosophical view that everyone holds their own version of the truth. And trauma can also shape the way you perceive things. Now, going back to trauma and the narrative style, it was really interesting for me when I reread the book to notice how fragmented memory was for each characters, and I realized it is a clear illustration of how traumatic memory works, because most of the time when you have lived a traumatic experience, the way your brain collect memory, or the way your brain organizes memory, it changes, it's different, and it tends to become fragmented. In this novel, the narration is not linear at all, it's non-linear, it's quite fragmented. There are a lot of flashbacks, and as I said, each character gets to tell their own version of the story using their own perspectives. This being said, that's why it was harder to rebuild her character. It was easier to build the character of Junior, obviously Hidden Christine, who are the main protagonists, Hidden Christine. But for May, it was hard because she's a secondary character, and it was hard to recollect who May is. But let's go see who May is. So when I decided to work on May, I struggled a little bit to find a title, because for me, my first idea was that May is an absent mother. But then I realized she's an absent mother because she is actually powerless. And then I was like, why is she powerless? Is it because of the circumstances she was born into, or is it because she gave away her power? So all of this fits into my video. So that's why my title, in the end, I was like, my title is actually going to be a question. Was May an absent mother, or was she a powerless mother? Was she intentionally absent, or was she deprived of her power to change the course of things in Christine's life? Yeah, and also it took me a bit of time to realize that May was Christine's mother. That's to tell you how distanced these two characters were in the book. What else can I say? You know what, May, I tried to like this character. It was really hard, especially when I realized that she was Christine's mother. But by the end of the book, I got more compassion for her. So let's go. Who is May? So the first time we are introduced to this character, she is described as a troubled woman, page 9. So you're like, who is this troubled woman, and what is her role in the book? Then we get to know a bit more about her kleptomania that follows her description as being troubled, and her kleptomania is mentioned page 36. Is it page 36? Yes. So she has a habit of stealing things, and we're like, hold on, what's going on with this woman? Okay, so it's really perplexing. As we continue to read, we start to get to know a bit more about this woman. So we learned that there are some things that are important for May. Before being a troubled woman, she was a woman who was usually interested with order. Order was paramount for her. What matters for May is order, devotion, in particular to men. We learn that she's actually like a safeguard for patriarchy. She devotes her whole life for a husband, and most importantly for a father-in-law, who is the infamous Bill Cosey. So she gives a whole life to him. At some point in the book, Elle, she was the cook in Bill Cosey's luxurious resort. Elle, she admits that she gave a lot for the resort. Okay, she worked her behind off for the resort. But she says, if I was a servant, May was a slave. So it's to tell you the extent to which May abandoned herself to support Bill Cosey and his resort. So she gave her life, her energy, her attention, also her mind to support Bill Cosey. She gave her everything. So she literally gave her life away for Bill Cosey. Page 103. May, a sweet-tempered daughter of a preacher, was bred to hard work and duty, and took the business like a bee to pollen. Later on, Elle adds, I think I deserve half the credit for the way the hotel grew. Then later on, still, you had to admire May. She was the one who arranged everything. Sew the linen, pay the bills, control the help. The two of us were like the back of a clock. It also seems like what matters for her is suffering for a good cause. It seems like she has been raised with this philosophy of suffering, in the sense that suffering is brave and you just have to enjoy it, and suffering is linked to good morality. Now, what worries May, this is what we learn in the book, is obviously lack of order, a lack of structure, and weirdly enough, lower class Black people. She absolutely despises lower class Black people, and we see it when her daughter Christine befriends Heed the Knight. Now, Heed the Knight, she comes from a very poor area. She comes from a deeply impoverished area called Up Beach. And when she notices that her daughter Christine becomes friends with her, she cannot breathe anymore. She can't breathe anymore. She almost goes ballistic. So she tries her best to separate the two girls simply on the grounds of Heed's social background. But it's very hard because the two young girls becomes friends like this, besties. But she tries her hardest to separate them because of their social class. What is interesting is that when Bill Cosey marries Heed, you know, Bill Cosey is in his 50s and he marries Heed when she's 11. What is surprising is that she's shocked, but she's shocked at first because of Heed's social and economic status more than anything. And after, the age is a problem. For May, the shame, the deep shame resides more in the fact that Bill Cosey married a girl from a beach than in the age gap and the fact that the bride is a child bride. The fact that she's destitute, and she really despises people from a beach. She has zero respect for them. She doesn't consider them, she barely sees them as people worthy of consideration. So this is really bad. This is really bad. Okay, so now, who is May as a mother? I did mention it quite a bit, but May as a mother, she is really cold, she is distant, she is not nurturing, she is not interested about being a mother. Her interest is supporting her husband, and more than anything else, her father-in-law. So she's not the warmest mother, she's not the most nurturing mother, and even Elle is really surprised about the lack of motherly feelings or motherly skills that May has. Another interesting fact regarding May as a mother is the fact that she basically asked Elle to raise Christine. Okay, so she left Christine's education to the responsibility of Elle. So clearly she was not very interested about being a mother. That was not a very important thing for her, unfortunately for Christine. As a result, and unsurprisingly, the relationship between Christine and May go through different stages. It goes from distance, abandonment, estrangement, shame, embarrassment. It also goes through a phase of bonding over common and deep hatred toward Hit the Night. Then the relationship goes through phases of bitter conflict between mother and daughter, then eventually forced reconciliation, and then finally we have a stage of understanding and empathy. The understanding and empathy unfortunately arrive after May is dead. So it was essentially a posthumous reconciliation. So it's only toward the end of May's life that Christine can feel or start to feel that her mother is an ally or a friend. They never really got to make amends formally in life. One of the reasons why they never got to really make amends in a formal way is due to May's descent into madness, because at some point her mental state deteriorates quite quickly. At the end of the book, I did feel a lot of pain for this character, because clearly she devoted her entire life for the hotel. And mind you, when Bill died, he left nothing for her. Although she was his daughter-in-law, and she basically sacrificed her life, she sacrificed her daughter for the hotel, but he left her with nothing in his will. And you know, I'm glad Elle did what she had to do. She falsified the will to ensure May ended up with something. Okay, like, hold on, this is not gonna happen, not on my watch. May is going to have something. So she falsified the will. She was like, this is not gonna happen, this is never happening on my watch. May sacrificed her whole life for the hotel, so she will have the hotel. And this is how May ends up with the hotel, thanks to the will that Elle falsified. So this is a way to re-establish justice for a woman who did make a lot of mistakes, for a woman who felt like the only way for her was to act as a gatekeeper for patriarchy, and who ended up with nothing after giving everything to support a system which was never made to support her and to value her anyways. I want to give pages for readers in case they are studying the book for whatever reason. Oh, where can I put this? Give me a second. Page 88. Everything is explained. Page 88. Okay, so Bill had left no will. You know, I'm reading through the book to find a few quotes, and I'm like hovering through the last chapter, and my eyes are feeling watery, and I know for a fact that when I'm gonna make this video about Heath and Christine, I'm gonna cry, especially when I'll have to cover the last chapter. The last chapter is just... Anyways, I absolutely love the fact that there is some justice for May, and this justice comes from Elle. Page 200, Elle says regarding the will, I had to stop him, had to. Then page 201, I wasn't going to let him put his family out in the streets. May was 61. What was she supposed to do? Spend her whole age in a straitjacket? And regarding the will, she says, I tore that malicious thing up. And that's where she distributed Bill Cosey's wealth to the family. Because, as I told you, Bill left nothing for his family. He left nothing for May, who gave her whole life to the hotel. And I'm glad that Elle was like, I'm not gonna let this happen. So page 200, 201, you have the deal. All right, now this is going to be the next part of my video. I'm going to talk about the reason why May was powerless as a mother. May is a powerless woman and she is a powerless mother. Now, when I was reading the book, I got upset many times, and I had to remember, girl, the times were different. It was in the 40s, okay? These things happened long ago. However, I realized I still do have reasons to be upset because some of the issues that are tackled in this novel are still prevalent in this day and age. Okay, so it's good to read these books and to realize that a lot of progress have been made, but these are issues that are still happening and we still need to be aware, and we must keep our minds, our hearts, our eyes open. But to go back to May, she grows up at a time where it was very difficult for a woman to get a sense of freedom, of individuality, especially if you were a woman and if you were a black woman born in a really modest family, or born into poverty, to say the right words. So your prospects were really limited as a woman. It was very hard to be born in these situations and to believe that you could just become a self-made woman. Not to say that it never happened. We do have brilliant examples of success stories from black women being born in very modest circumstances and being able to reach a level of independence, freedom, or economic success. But these stories are not these stories were not common. So at the time it was very hard for a woman, for a black woman, to be born in this situation and believe that you could find an easy way out. So for May, for her, she quickly felt like her only way out was to support the only thing she knew of. Her only way out was to play the game and to support patriarchy and to play her role. When May marries Billy Boy is Bill Cosey's son. So that's how she became Bill Cosey's daughter-in-law. Okay. So when May marries Billy Boy, she's described as being obviously a newcomer in the family, but she's also described in positive terms. She's described as being a beautiful woman, soft-spoken, well-mannered, but her vision of life is quite flawed and is quite dangerous, is quite perilous for her. She doesn't believe in self-actualization, and she believes she just have to, for her to being accepted in a wealthy family, she instantly felt like she had to give her life away as a repayment. She felt like this was a way for her to pay back. This was a way for her to pay back being accepted into this family as a poor woman with principle. Because I have to say, I said earlier, she was despising loyal black people, but for her there's a difference between being poor with morals and poor with no morality, with low moral standards. And May do believe that upbeat people were people with very low moral standards. So quickly you realize that May, she's not related to Bill Cosey by blood. She's related to him by way of marriage, but she decides to give her life away for him. She's completely devoted to Bill Cosey and his hotel. She makes it an important point to become a guardian of his property, but also of his legacy. Now, Billy Boy, who is actually May's husband, died early on, unfortunately, and that's why Christine never got to grow up with her father. So Christine had to grow with an absent mother. But what is interesting is the fact that during a conversation between Bill Cosey and another character called Sandler, Bill Cosey explains that he clearly saw why Billy Boy married May, because she was a meek, submissive woman, and he could easily mold her into the woman he wanted to be. By having May as a wife, he could really have a woman who would never challenge him and who would work for him. A woman, a wife who would work to support his dreams, his life, his goals. A woman who would be easily manipulated, a woman who would be dutifully waiting on the side silently, and who would be fully obedient to him. Page 102 we can see that Billy Boy really wanted to copy his father in everything, including his choice on women and including patriarchal views. So page 102, we have Billy Boy. He took his father's advice in everything, including marriage, to wed a devoted, not calculating girl. So Billy Boy chose May, who, as anybody could see, would neither disrupt nor rival the bond between father and son. Mr. Cosey was alarmed at first, not being privy to his son's selection, but was made easy when the bride was not only impressed with the hotel, but also showed signs of understanding what superior men require. If I was a servant in that place, May was a slave. Her whole life was making sure those cozy men had what they wanted. The father more than the son, the father more than her own daughter. That is Elle talking. So here we can clearly see that May acted like a tool, like a gatekeeper for patriarchy, and she was the perfect wife for Billy Boy. She was a perfect daughter-in-law for Bill Cosey. But as he got older and after the death of Billy Boy, then Bill Cosey started to regret this choice, and he started to feel like he didn't really understand why Billy Boy picked her as a wife. And he started to regret because he realizes that he projected his ideals on his son, and his son just did what he thought his father would approve of. So this is page 43 in the chapter called Friend. So this is Bill Cosey talking. He is saying, I used to wonder why he picked a woman like May to marry. Maybe he was somebody else and I made him my shadow. So here he regrets the fact that he didn't spend enough time knowing his son, and he implicitly imposed certain ideals on his son. I think one of the reasons why Bill Cosey regrets the choice of May is because at some point May has a really weird stance toward black people. I mean, during May's descent into madness, she becomes deeply paranoid. She is frightened by the changes happening in the world, and in particular civil rights movement. She goes ballistic when civil rights movements are happening. She clearly loses her mind. She doesn't understand what's happening. She is scared to death, and she starts to have a stance toward black people, toward her community, which is very unhealthy. But at the same time, she's unwell mentally. So does she adopt this stance because she is unwell mentally? Does she adopt this stance because she's so into order, she's so into obedience that she doesn't recognize a need for black people to fight for freedom? Although it is said in the book that she was initially like a regular person, she was pro-black, she supported her community, but at some point she doesn't support civil rights movement at all, and she sees a part of her community as enemies. She does start to see some black people as enemies. She loses her mind. Okay, so we can't blame her. She's going through difficult times. My next part actually contains things that I've mentioned earlier. I am so chatty. I need to be more organized. I actually, and you know what gets on my nerves is I actually spend so much time preparing my notes, but when I make the video, I get so enthusiastic. I want to talk, and I just like go overboard. That means this section contains things I've mentioned before. This section is essentially about the fact that May gives her power away because she gives her life energy toward the hotel. She gives her mind to the hotel, and she has no time to be a nurturing, attentive mother to Christine. So Christine is totally let down. Christine feels lonely, and that's the reason Christine had no choice but to build such a tough skin and to develop an aggressive personality. It was for her a defense mechanism. So the mother and the daughter have very, very, very different personalities, very different defense mechanism. For May, her defense mechanism was to obey by the rules and to conform to patriarchy and to be fully submissive, to conform to patriarchal ideals. But for Christine, she said, F everything, I'm gonna have my freedom, I'm gonna be an independent woman. But then again, unfortunately for Christine, it was very hard due to the time she was living in, due to society at this point. So yeah, it was very hard for her to reach her ideals. In this aspect, in finding her way to reach self-actualization, self-agency, freedom, independence, her trajectory is quite similar to Schuller's trajectory in the novel with the same name, in the novel called Schuller. So I did recognize some similarities, and it did warm my heart, because people don't realize how important it is for human beings to feel a sense of self-actualization and to experience a certain level of freedom. So to go back to May, yes, May is powerless. She gives away her power, but now as I'm making this video, again, I do have compassion for her because she felt it was her only way out. That's why as a woman, her sense of identity is entirely tied to Bill Cosey. Her sense of identity is entirely tied to wifehood, and it's entirely tied to her devotion to the men in her life, which are her husband. But when her husband died, her father-in-law, her devotion was actually, even when she was married, her devotion was more important. Her devotion was more significant toward Bill Cosey. I guess probably because Bill Cosey had the money and he provided for her material security. I did feel sad to see that May had zero agency, and in this situation it's very hard to protect anyone when you have no power. I do feel like May got a bit of her power back. She was able to reclaim a bit of her power when she descended a little bit into madness. I feel like when she descended a little bit into madness, she became maybe a little bit more vocal, a bit more performative about the things she didn't like and she didn't want to accept. You will see that in the novel. Next part, May is an absent mother because she's not interested of being a mother. I did mention that. I did mention that earlier. She's an absent mother, so the relationship between May and Christine is marked by coldness, distance, total misunderstanding, and it's only at the very end, and it's only when May dies, that Christine gets to understand her mother a little bit more. Yeah, she's not really motherly, she's not interested in being a mother, and she's much more interested with supporting Bill Cosey's hotel, because for her this is, for once in her life, security, and that's the only thing, unfortunately, that gives her a sense of identity, that gives her a sense of value. She feels useful helping in the hotel and devoting herself to the hotel. Okay, now this is the last part of my video. As I said, that's when, okay, let me close this window because it's a bit noisy and I don't have my microphone today. So last part of my video, I did say that as I was moving forward in the novel, and also because I'm a sensitive person, I tend to support the underdogs. Okay, that's just me. I do have compassion. I do feel compassion for May, and I do feel like, although I did say all these things, she's an absent mother, she has no power, she's not interested into being a mother, there are some moments in the book where she tries. Not a lot. Her efforts are not gigantic, but she tries. So, I mean, well, okay. I think, first point, you might agree, disagree, you know. First point, I believe, and it was, I have to say, it was a very clumsy, failed attempt at protecting Christine. I think it was really flawed, okay? I think this attempt was a flop. But once again, that's what I like about Toni Morrison. She's not telling us perfect heroes. She's showing us human beings, people who are human, complex, flawed, multifaceted, multidimensional, who are trying to live with their past, to carve a present for themselves, to build a present for themselves. I mean, humans that are flawed, they're not perfect. So May is not perfect. So for May, her way to protect Christine was to really separate her from Heed. Okay, so for May, Heed, because of her social economic status, Heed was danger. So one way she tried to protect Christine, and which was a mistake, we found out in the end, was to separate her from Heed. Later on, she goes even further by trying to harvest hatred between them by planting the seed of hatred between the two girls, which, as I said earlier, were really friends. And that's a shame, because for Christine and Heed, this friendship was really a safe place against a really hostile world for young black girls. So that was one attempt, failed attempt, and an attempt that proved to be a mistake. She felt that was how she could protect her daughter, but wrong. Secondly, through the recollections of the characters, we get to understand that at some point, May tried to protect Christine by moving her to another bedroom. Let me find it. Is it page 95? In my head, I have page 95. Let us see. Yeah, we have. Then one day, the little girl's mother came to tell her she would have to leave her bedroom and sleep in a smaller room on another floor. When she asked her mother why, she was told it was for her own protection. There were things she shouldn't see or hear or know about. So from this perspective, we have the... Oh! Some cats are fighting. Stop fighting! Wait. Stop fighting! Be friends! Hey! I don't like violence. Okay, I believe I can resume my video. I don't know what's going on, but let me see. Okay, looks like everything is back to normal. During the burial of Bill Cosey, at this stage, May is already quite unwell mentally, so people know that her actions are not always intentional. But there's like a funny moment where, like a crazy moment where during the burial, Christine gets really mad. She takes a knife out of her pocket and she tries to jump over to Heath. I mean, Christine is... I'll make a video about these two. Obviously, she is stopped. And at this point, May is here. And May, instinctively, she sides with her daughter and she grabs Heath's hat and she throws it in the air to embarrass her. Do I have a hat too? I wish I had a hat. Wait, let me get a hat. Right, I didn't really have to do all that, but I love making these little videos. So she grabs the hat. Let's say this is the hat here. Okay, let's say this is Heath. She grabs the hat from Heath and she just like tosses it in the air. I mean, you know, listen, this is a novel. I would never encourage this behavior in real life. This is a novel, okay? I want to remind you, this is a novel, okay? So this is not real life. Anyway, so here we have a kind of humorous depiction of mother and daughters siding together. It's page 99. It's very dark. I hope the quality will still be good. Okay, page 99. Yes, and it's quite emphasized. It's quite humoristic. It's page 98, 99. May, however, understood what was needed and immediately took her daughter's side. Stepping forward into that feline heat, she removed Heath's Gone with the Wind hat and tossed it into the air. Perfect. A giggle from somebody opened a space in which Heath chased her hat and Christine cooled. And finally, page 135, we do have a recollection. We have a recollection of May having a motherly urge. May makes a lovely attempt to protect her daughter. This attempt fails, but she tries anyways. And this recollection, this attempt, as minimal as it seems, with the little impact it made, because it was a failure, it kind of served to restore a little bit May's dignity, and May's position as a mother, we can see that she did try a bit to be a protector. So page 135, that's after an incident that happened at lunch, and after that she was upset at her husband, and instead of projecting her anger toward her husband, she projects her anger toward Christine, and she burned Christine's bed. After this, Bill takes the decision of sending Christine away from the house, and May disagrees. So page 135, this is May saying, "But he'd started the fire. She's the guilty one. Why should Christine leave?" So as you say, this is a very short passage, but for me that made a big splash. That restored May's dignity. For me, there is love transpiring from this. Although May was really clumsy, May did not have her priority set in the right order. She had some love for her daughter. She just didn't know how to mother, I believe. That's it for me. That was the character May. If you have read Love, please let me know your thoughts about the book, or precisely about the character May, because this video is about May. But that's what I have for her. I mean, I like the fact that no character in this book is perfect. They are all flawed human beings. I do have to say, May was definitely not my favorite character. She was not even part of the characters that I necessarily liked, but it doesn't mean that I don't have any compassion for this character. I do have compassion for this character. So let me know your thoughts. I hope you did enjoy the video. That's it. Sorry for the lighting. It is really dark outside. I'm actually thinking of buying some lighting material because I'm so new to YouTube. I mean, not new in terms of years, because this channel has been made years ago. I'm not consistent. I have very little knowledge. I need to get better. So I'm gonna sit down and think about ways to improve just the video settings, everything. But in the meantime, I really do enjoy making these videos. I mean, I love reading. I love talking about characters. I love learning through books. I love good prose. I love literature. And I absolutely love this icon, Toni Morrison. So I love making these videos. I hope you do enjoy them. Please subscribe, give a like, anything, support if you have liked it. I mean, it's always nice to see that people, you know, like the work you do or share the same passion. So that's all for me. Take care. Look after yourself. Bye-bye.